Hello, good evening, and welcome everyone. Welcome to all our Facebook users, those on Zoom, and our panelists. My name is Kern Johnson, and we want to welcome you to another exciting and informative episode of Tobago Civil Net. This one is entitled Tobago Talkback. All right. We have with us some wonderful panelists that they're going to be sharing their views with us as it relates to this unique situation that we find ourselves in tonight. Firstly, we have Ms. Diane Haddad. She's the chairman of the Tobago Chamber of Commerce. Good evening and welcome, ma'am. We have Mr. Didan Daniel. He's the president of the Tobago Agricultural Society. Good evening, sir, and welcome. We have with us Mr. Jamal George. He's an educator, an artist, and an advocate. Welcome, sir. And we have Mr. Andre Phillips. He is the president of the People's United to Save Our Heritage Foundation. Welcome. We also have another guest who will join us shortly. That's Miss Caroline Birchwood James, and she's the vice president of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. So these are the panelists that we will have here with us tonight, and I just want to welcome you all. For those of you tuning in, you would know by now that Tobago Civil Net is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society organizations, and they are interested in combining all their resources, and their purpose is to have that collective input in Tobago's development. And as we talk about that collective input in Tobago's development, with your introductory statements, starting with Miss Diane Haddad, could you tell us what are your thoughts on this 6-6 impasse? Just give us briefly in an opening statement, and we'll move on to Mr. Daniel and so on. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me first say good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me. I think the 6-6 impasse is an indication, it's a message from the people to the people, indicating that there is some measure of discomfort or need for some sort of different measures of dialogue, of change. There's a message. It didn't happen just like that. And so for me, I think that at this stage, there needs to be exactly what we're doing, which is dialogue and some sort of consultation on how do we move forward. So I think the 6-6, it has different messages. There's the physical and the spiritual aspect of it. And so I think we need to take that very much into account with whatever we do.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Ms. Haddad. Mr. Daniel, over to you, sir. What are your thoughts? Please unmute your mic, sir. Nothing yet. There's a button with a mic there. If you put your mouse over it close to the bottom of the screen, you just press the mute function and it should unmute your mic. Correct, that's it there.
Nice.
You just pressed it back again. Right, go ahead now. Right. No, right, we all know, good. Mr. Daniel, I think.
No, right, great. So clearly this 6-6 is a message that presents us with an opportunity to think differently, to be innovative, to put a governance model that will work for the people. Right? There's a clear indication of a message that has been sent to us through the action of the electors on the island, that there's a significant need for change. And I'm hoping that the players that be listen clearly to that signal and respond accordingly in a way that will bring about the type of outcomes that we all desire.
Thank you.
So
thank you so much. Thank you so much for that passionate response, Mr. Daniel. Over to you, Ms. Caroline. Did you just join us, or did you hear the question? I'm not hearing you. You're sounding a bit soft.
You hear me now?
Yes, correct. Yes, hearing you.
Okay. So tell me the question. I was
Yeah.
off and then why?
All right, good. So we just wanted you to give, in your opening or introductory remarks, what are your thoughts on the current 6-6 situation?
Well, it's an opportunity for us to do something different in Tobago, to set the pace for a new type of governance. And I must also say that we need to sort out this matter very quickly because we have an economy that we need to restart. We have a tourism sector that is in a lot of trouble at this point in time. And therefore, we need strong leadership. We need definite leadership. We need leadership that is innovative. And therefore, the 6-6 is an opportunity for us to have a different kind of governance, an innovative governance, trend-setting governance, a new governance structure for Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Could we move over to Mr. Jamal George now, please?
Yeah,
What are your thoughts?
I have to echo the sentiments of all the previous speakers, right? And I think that they're very much on point, and I'm in great alignment with them. For me, it's a huge indicator that Tobagonians have grown discontented and dissatisfied with the current status quo, and a change is therefore needed. In addition to that, I do think that the 6-6 deadlock presents an opportunity for collaboration between the two political parties, which is something that we don't see a lot of in Trinidad and Tobago. And lastly, it's also an indicator that some changes do need to be made to the current system of governance and by extension, politics in general.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And could we move on now to Mr. Phillips? What are your thoughts?
Right. So, as most of the speakers before have said, a pleasant night to everybody in the Wi-Fi world and wherever you are tuning into this stream. I believe that the consent is that 12 assemblymen have been identified, 6 from either party. And it seems to indicate to me that the individual or the people are more important than the party. In addition to which, I would think that the parties have not digested fully what this means. And in terms of the 6-6, it appears to me as though the 6-6 as of Wednesday has become 12-0. Because only one side has any resources at their disposal and the other side is out of the game completely. 1 month after the elections, today, February 25th.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Phillips. And I think that everyone's sentiments on the panel so far has been most of what Tobago is saying. The Tobago Civil Net engaged in an exercise whereby they had a poll online on Facebook where they asked persons concerning the Tobago THA 2021 elections, what do people want? And we had a series of responses. We also had a series of comments. So tonight we're going to be talking about some of those comments. I'm going to let you all know what some of those comments are, and you let me know what your feelings on those comments are. But so far, in terms of the poll, 98% of the persons were from Tobago. And when the question was asked, what is your preference for resolving the current THA 6-6 impasse? And a couple selections were given. We had the selections were as follows: a third-party mediation by Tobago Civil Society, power sharing amongst parties, go back to the polls, change the number of seats or the number of Tobago districts, that is, change the THA Act to allow for direct voting of the Chief Secretary and the presiding officer, and draw lots. And there was another option for other. Based on the factors that I just mentioned, the highest number of persons, I'll mention in order of highest to lowest, the preferred going back to the polls, followed by direct voting for the chief secretary and the presiding officer, followed by a change in the number of districts in Tobago. That was then followed by power sharing among the parties, then drawing lots, then third-party mediation, and other. So it's interesting because it's random persons, it's a random, completely randomized design. And, you know, based on what you're hearing in the spheres or the circles, you think people would want more party collaboration. Of course, it's not entirely scientific, but it's a indication of what is happening on the ground. And I think what a lot of persons on the panel mentioned so far, it encompassed a lot of that. Mr. George, what are your thoughts about the results from the poll so far?
Yeah, so as it relates to the quantitative data that you just presented, right? I made an assumption that most persons would want to go back to the polls, right? I also found it to be a surprise that the second most option voted for was the option to have the chief secretary and the presiding officer on the ballot so that you can vote for it, right? Which is similar to the system in the United States, which to me is a very innovative idea. And I think it's something that should be seriously considered as it relates to the Tobago bill that's currently before the Parliament in Trinidad, right? I went ahead and I dug a little deeper into the qualitative data that was presented. And for me, the themes kept coming out as negotiate, collaborate, and demonstrate some more mature leadership. So even though the majority of respondents want us to go back to the polls, to me, the answers really lie in the qualitative data. Yeah, we can go back to the polls, but at the end of the day, the leaders and the parties by extension need to do a better job coming to the table, negotiating, collaborating on a way forward for Tobago and Tobagonians.
All right, good. Mr. Daniel, let me hear what are your thoughts on the responses so far. Please unmute your mic. Unmute your mic, sir.
Right. So just like the previous panelists, I was a bit surprised. Well, I shouldn't say surprised, but I expected the results from the poll to be in line with it is, particularly with respect to going back to the polls. Now, my thinking on that is that our political education and our political culture would predispose us to thinking in a certain way that perhaps we should go with what is programmed and what is we are accustomed to. And this is the way to break the deadlock, because a big part of our political culture is the winner take all kind of approach, not proportional representation, but so they have a clear winner and that is it. But what 6-6 tells me is that there is a need, because the electorate has chosen 6-6 from both sides. That cannot be invalidated at all. And so that creates the opportunity to say, here what? The whole notion of proportional representation has been in the dialogue for some time. It has been not been treated in a certain way because, again, our political culture that we have inherited as say, hey, winner take all. But therein lies, this is an opportunity to say, okay, let's based on that, have a governance model that takes the best in terms of the human resource from the different political parties and try to work out a formula that will work for the best for all of us. Because our personal feeling is that, because I know some of the personalities on both sides of the political spectrum, and I think they have a lot to offer in terms of governance and running this island and providing a vision that we could all coalesce around and so on. And as a small society, we must strive to get the best of all of us and not try to this winner-take-all approach and just leave off the rest.
Well, Mr. Daniel, you used a word there that I wanna come back to a little later on. you use a phrase rather, what is best for Tobago? But we'll talk about that a little later on. Let me go over to Miss Diane. What are your comments?
Well, I must say, Kern, that the results are interesting. I found
Very
them.
much so. Yeah.
I actually think that people don't want to be in the situation of the uncertainty. So let's go back to the polls and let's get it over and done with and decide which way I'm going, whether it's win or lose, die or live, but just make a decision. I think that came out. But in listening to Jamal in terms of his diagnosis, because he said he went into it more,
yeah.
What the other message was from what he was saying was, hey, we need to get this thing together, and people actually had different ideas there. So to me, that sends a bigger message. I want to agree with Didan. We have good people on both sides. And what is best for Tobago and Tobagonians? And I think Tobago is so small that the people do not want to live in disharmony. And the winner takes all approach actually has created disharmony. So because of that, this is their opportunity to bring some level of unity and peace, and let us take the best that there is to offer to push and drive the island forward and its people development and so on. I think what I was saying, Jamal saying, if I'm correct, and you could correct me all, because I almost said I want to be now not on the panel, I want to ask questions. So if Jamal has more information from the data that he went into deeper, I think it's interesting if he is to share some of that, because I think that sends even a different signal to what your numbers game gave you.
Right, thank you. All right. Well, we'll get back to Mr. Jamal, and I'm sure, Mr. Jamal, whatever other analysis you may have looked into, please feel free to share them in context to whatever we are discussing. So that much good, excellent. Ms. Caroline, over to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, your poll is quite interesting, but I would say this: it is not my poll, because I've been going around and asking people questions. And my poll says, most of the people, that they feel they should do a coalition, that they should be come together, all 12 of them sit down and work it out. This is what my poll says. But if your poll is true, this is me walking around and talking to people. But if your poll is true, then it goes back to our political education. So it's a winner take all. We have never considered this idea of coalition. We have never considered this idea of coming together and running this island of Tobago in the country of Trinidad and Tobago. So there are some interesting things in the poll too, because that second one, where you are voting for the chief secretary and the presiding officer apart, I think it's a good idea in talking about our self-government bill and all of that. So all of these things are coming into it. But whatever it is that we do, we have to do it in the interest of Tobago, and we have to do it speedily, because Tobago needs help. They need to make sure that whoever is in charge now, they can perform. We need people who are innovative. So I don't know which poll is right. And let me also say this: people at this point in time are also confused, because you have a prime minister. He's gone to Parliament, only spoke to 6. He hasn't spoken to the next 6. And has gone and decided that he wants to go back to the poll. He decided, not the people of Tobago decide. He decided he wanted to go back to the polls, and he has gone to Parliament and done his own thing. Is that in the interest of Tobago? These are the kind of questions that we need to ask, okay? Because you have not spoken to the next half of Tobago. So we are very confused. I am confused as to our way forward.
Thank you, Ms. Caroline, and some very interesting points. And of course, we're going to get a little deeper into those points. I always say these things are too short. They don't even give us, we never have enough time for these discussions, because things start getting, But let me go back to Mr. Phillips. Mr. Phillips, come in and let me get your contributions.
All right. So you had a quantitative feedback, which seemed to suggest that the third highest ranked result was the request for civil society participation in this. And I think that's what you said.
Yes.
If that is the case, and I understand Jamal's qualitative assessment that negotiate and engage with some of the information coming out from the deeper responses, then what I intended to share is really germane. I feel that we are at this point in time, because this is civil society talking back, CivilNet put the information out there. And the thing is, I believe mapping civil society participation in Tobago's democratic practices and democratic institutions is now in focus. I believe that this is what should be on the table, the parameters for us to pursue, because while the poll had been done, and I don't know how long ago it was done, the fact is a lot has changed in that the situation become quite dynamic in the last week, especially this week with the THA amendment bill becoming, having a passage in the lower house and expected to have passage in the Senate if it's going there. That means that we now have to assess the situation. And this improves the scenario, I think, for civil society to participate more in what is happening, because this is still very doable in terms of the civil society trying to broker arrangements with both parties. And if that is not on the table, I would like to, a little later on, talk about some measures that civil society should be able to engage, or that we can, in truth, in fact, participate as a body in the days and weeks going forward.
All right, thank you. Well, based on one of the concerns that you raised in your comments, the total responses for the polls were in the amount of 828, and it was done from Wednesday, the 17th of February to date, that is today. So all the information were collected within that period of time, right? I get a common theme going, when I listen to all the panelists, when I go through the document, and that theme is negotiation. Do you think that, okay, we are in a 6-6 situation. Do you think that you could consider either party as power grabbing or wanting to hold on to power because they don't give in to the requests of the other? Miss Caroline, let's start with you.
Well, it all depends. It's a 6-6, and it all depends on the perspective of how you look at it. You understand me? I think, yes, there's a certain measure of power grabbing, yes. I feel so. And in the situation that we have now, in that we don't have any winners, we don't have any losers. But it appears as though there are some who are winners. And I must say, in my poll that I did, people talked about that. People talk about the apparent winners, even though there are no winners and there are no losers. So this is something that we have to address. And it appears as though it is business as usual. Our power grabbing is going on. We are going to continue as usual. And maybe 2 years might pass, 3 years might pass before the amendment kick in, meaning the EBC outline whatever new districts there are, and so on. So there is a feeling of some kind of power grabbing and a feeling of some kind of unfairness is happening.
All right. Mr. George, let me hear your contribution.
Yeah, Miss Caroline just said something that I wrote an article about, right? And that is, it appears, right, like business as usual, it appears as though there is power grabbing taking place, right? And, just like I said in the article, a political analyst, a very close friend of mine once told me that things must not only be, but they must also appear to be. And in this situation here, where we have one political party spearheading all of the actions towards the quote unquote resolution, it's therefore appearing as a biased decision, or rather that biased decisions are being made. And if you were to ask the average man, in the same way that Ms. Caroline went out and she did her own poll, and I'm looking at the qualitative data from the poll that CivilNet did, it's saying the same thing. People are expressing the same views, the same opinions about the situation. That yes, we want to see negotiation, we want to see collaboration in the best interest of Tobago, but it also looks like one side has more control, power than the other side does, when it should be divided and a balance should be struck between the two. So I do agree with the fact that it does seem like power grabbing on behalf of one political party in particular. It definitely is, and I don't think that anyone can deny that. And the last thing that I want to say about people denying that it looks that way is, based on the parliamentary debates, based on the press conferences that have been had, there is some consciousness on behalf of the one side that people do see it as power grabbing, that people do see it as though that they're being unfair. People do see it as though they're not really listening to the people, but rather putting their party above people. It is very evident, right? Because they make it a point to dispel that feeling and to allay people's feelings in that regard. So without a doubt, it looks that way.
All right, wow, thank you. Mr. Daniel. Excellent.
So, yeah, no, I see things a little different. I've seen on the one hand, power retention and power acquisition. Because again, the 6-6 paints a picture. We have one party that has moved from 12 to 10 to 6, right? And if I'm to, I noted very carefully the words used by the political leader, the local political leader on the night of the election. She talks about retaining. So I look at the point of there's a retention of power, and then the other party want to acquire power because they have moved from 2 to 6, right? And therein lies the quagmire. And so what it presents to us, based on one of the contributions made earlier, is that, hey, this is the germane time for a certain level of negotiation, because the two parties are coming to this with equal power, with equal mandate from the electorate to say, okay, we will want you to represent us. And so to allay the misconceptions that the electorate may have, they should really take some sober moments to understand what is being said by it and do the things that are necessary so that all our collective aspirations could be met. The time is now, right? This is a germane opportunity that has been laid bare naked for the political apparatus, for want of a better term. And they have to operate in a certain kind of way to satisfy everybody or to delight everyone. So innovative approaches is needed. I like this idea about electing the chief secretary and the presiding officer. All these nice novel things that could really advance our democracy. I think the Caribbean is looking at us, right? And looking to the signals that we are sending to the world. And this is our opportunity. The spotlight is on us. Let me don't waste this moment.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. And we're going to take Mr. Andrew next. But before we move on, in your mind, what does negotiation in the Tobago context, in this specific context, what does negotiation look like? You know, I'm going to get your comments on it, but Mr. Phillips, we're over to you. But I just wanted the other panelists to think about that as we come back around to them.
So the power grab.
Yes.
The power grab itself is really a question of incumbency. The incumbents have retained their position. They continue to be the custodians of the executive council and the operations therein. They carry the powers and functions up to now. The other side has no wherewithal to do checks and balances, no oversight of what is going on, because they can only do that through the assembly. In effect, this is a 12-0 situation as we are now. Because of the decisions taken this week, it is a case of all for the incumbents, the Executive Council, the PNM remains entrenched, and the issue of the PDP and what role they can play at this time, that is very dark and murky. What civil society needs to do is to present some proposals and indeed consider the wherewithal that there will probably not be any movement towards negotiation in view of the fact that a hard decision has been taken by the Prime Minister and leader of the PNM nationally that we have to head back to the polls. So the custodians will remain where they are, carrying out the powers and functions of the Executive Council in a manner that is not true democracy. And civil society needs now to weigh in by looking at measures that we first can devise and then look to pursue in an effort to seize this moment. One which would allow for participatory democracy, because the opposition, well, the people who are now in opposition, so to speak, the PDP, appear to be marginalized. And somebody has to fill the void to carry out the checks and balances needed in this scenario. A scenario that I would suggest may very well run for another 6 months. I saw that the clause says 120 days after the proclamation, the EBC to present something. Let's put some data on the table. Let's put a flesh on the table. It's March. So if you have 4 months to work on the elections and boundaries list, you're talking about going towards June, July. So I rested for there. But the coalition, the role of civil society is very germane, and it's not limited to mediation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. George, you wanted to make a comment?
I wanted to add something to what Mr. Phillips just said, right, about, because he brought up undemocratic. And the new defense for what has taken place now is that it's about the law, right? That all of the things that we're doing is about the law. But I think that it begs the question, law is one thing, and we know that morals is something different, and sometimes the two never meet, right? It being about the law and using that as a defense, to me begs the question, well, what about the voice of the people, right? Because they have voted and they have elected who they felt would properly represent them in the assembly, right? Because at the end of the day, if we could think back to history, slavery was law. Did that make it right? Did that make it moral? Women did not have certain rights, in the past, and it was part of the law. Did that make it right? Did that make it moral? Did that make it a democratic situation? So to me, to use a defense that it's part of the law is inconsiderate of the people.
All right. Well, Mr. George, as you're there, maybe you could start off with the other question that was asked. And just based on Mr. Phillips' comment, going back to the same document, another question was, for how long after elections are you willing to wait for full resolution of this impasse? And the options were as follows. There were no more than 1 month, no more than 3 months, no more than 6 months, no more than a year, and other. And the responses in order of highest to lowest are as follows. No more than 3 months, then no more than 1 month, followed by no more than 6 months, then no more than a year, and other. So no more than 3 months, no more than 1 month, no more than 6 months. Mr. George?
I know that I saw that Ms. Caroline wanted to say something.
Oh, yes, sorry. Ms. Caroline, sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to give it to
My
her.
apologies.
I just want to say that law is made for man and not man for the law. And that encompasses all those who talk about that is the law and ignoring all the other areas where people are very have a certain area of discontent. So we have to bear that in mind. That is why we have laws. That's why we have amendment to the laws. That's why we have change to the laws. Okay, because it is for man. Okay? So I just want to say, because a lot of people are talking about that is the law, and therefore you have the executive council there doing as usual and so on. And when you ask, you say that's the law. You have people who have lost their elections. People are talking. People are asking, why is this particular person there? When the person who has won in the area is there waiting to do some kind of performance. So we have to be very careful when we talk about law. There are other things we have to take into consideration beside the law.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, Mr. George, back to you. Let's hear what do you think negotiation looks like, and if you want to comment on the responses as it relates to the time frame, then you're free to do that as well.
Yeah, I think that as it relates to the time frame, very quickly, you know, I definitely think that it's going to take more than 3 months, right? That's the reality of the situation here. I doubt it's going to happen before 3 months. So that's that. As it relates to negotiations and what that could look like, I actually think something as simple as bringing the two parties together to determine, okay, let me take a step back. I think there's an opportunity to walk and chew gum at the same time, right? The amendments can be made to the bill, so on and so forth, because that deals with the system itself and the future of the system itself, right? In the interim, the two leaders and by extension their members should have come together to determine how they would function moving forward, and who might be best to appoint to certain divisions, so on and so forth. I even see a world where you can have secretaries and undersecretaries, or your secretaries belong to one party, your assistant secretaries belong to another party. Something in the interim until we get the bill passed, so that you can then go back to the polls, if it is that you have withdrawn your districts, so on and so forth, and then go from there. But a conversation to me, and a meeting of the minds, and a seeking to understand and seeking to be understood, and putting the two agendas on the table and determining from each of them what can be accomplished together, I think is an approach that could have been taken.
All right. Miss Diane, come in here and let me hear what your thoughts are. What does negotiation look like to you?
Well, let me just say a little bit on the grabbing thing, because I realize you missed me out there, but it's okay. I'm only kidding. My thinking there, Kern, really is that, and even to what Jamal just said, so I want to put it all together. First, to begin with, you have people that are part of a party. They are part of an organization. And even if the 12 level-headed people have the best interests of Tobago at heart and wish to sit and do it, they are being monitored and manipulated by people who they are a part of. And that is problem number one. Maybe if they did not have such an influence, maybe the decision making would have already started to take place, and maybe Tobago may have been in a more peaceful decision making space. So it's as though you are sitting there and trying to move forward, maybe, and everything else around you is grabbing you and pulling you back. You have weights on you. So we have to understand that aspect of it. And this is why you will get in your surveys, maybe, because like Caroline, I ask a lot of people. And interestingly, a lot of people call me, and people are not comfortable with what is happening. But there is a big disadvantage, because in trying to hold on to what's there to supply your own needs, you're actually hurting so many people that they can turn on you, even the ones that you expected support from in the first place, because at the end of the day, Tobagonians are hurting. Not only are we hurting from what we've gone through for the last 13 years, we have hurt from COVID-19, and now we are further at a standstill, painfully hurting now in terms of we cannot even present ourselves anywhere to negotiate anything because everybody looks at us as your life is on a bigger pause than COVID ever had. So we need to be clear about our actions and what the end result and the reaction could be. So I want it to be clear that the people who are sitting there, if they did not have influences, external or party influences, they may have come as 12 good minds together and done something already. But there are those external forces, and that's why your survey will probably come back and say, let's go to the polls. Let's really just clean cut this. But when Jamal analyzes it deeper, he recognizes people really want the best, as Didan is saying, to come out and represent. We really want the best because it resides here, but it may reside on opposite ends. But we really want the 12 best there. We want the best presiding officer. We want the best chief secretary. We want the best secretary for finance. We want the best secretary for tourism. We want the people who are going to make the decisions to drive the people in this island forward. This island has been stagnated, stalemated for the longest while in spite of output and contributions. So, and it's not that, and I want to tell you many times in politics, they're very good people as part of a party, but they're so entrenched in whatever holds them down. Because to me, at some stage, it's almost as though you give up your freedom. You actually give up your own democracy when you join, that you become a part of an organization that no longer allows you to think. And so in order for you to get something, you have to conform. And to me, what I'm hearing from what Jamal is saying from and the polls that you are reading, Kern, is hey, no more than 3 months, we need to get this over and done with. A month is already gone. Y'all are wasting my time. Y'all have really, it needs to happen. And number two is we really want the best of it. So could we get this thing together? And could we go forward by fixing what we've been yearning for and dangling, promising for years now to fix this whole THA Act? And how are we going to move forward for internal authorizations, determinations, governance, whatever, negotiations? And I think that is the bigger message. But Tobagonians will really prefer it to be peaceful. But as I said on an interview on television, if it's not done in their best interest, Tobagonians don't fight, they don't quarrel, they don't go out there and war, they use this.
Understood.
Let me say
Mr.
this.
Phillips.
Indeed, the 3 months and the 1 month represent a kind of situation that's a majority. People are not looking for 6 months down the road. They're looking for resolution within 3 months at best. And in that regard, it appears as though there will be several unmet expectations among the people on the island who were communicated with and who really represent the population. The only way I think that the PDP will get back into the reckoning at this point in time is if the pre-action protocol letter succeeds and it forces a decision that allows the clerk of the house to go back and allow the process to work to its end, ad nauseum at the end, leading to drawing lots, because it will have to be a situation where the pre-action protocol is looking at a solution. Legal, as Jamal would say, yes, but legal, relevant legal in this regard. So if the action that has already been finalized by the PNM, in this case, the PNM controlled parliament, in having a new bill passed that would say the track we are running on is one to have the EBC re-demarcate or demarcate or redesign the boundaries to Tobago and allow us to have 15, and a time frame that would be about 104 days, right, after the proclamation of this bill. And on the other hand, you have the action of the pre-action protocol letter, which should be very quick. So I think in one regard, we either get a very favorable position coming out from that approach by the PDP, and even if there's a challenge, the PNM will challenge it. It will mean then that it will have to go to the Court of Appeal. And for all you know, it may have to go to the Privy Council. What that says is that route will close down the whole process for about 6 months, because you know the scenario to be able to push matters through to the Privy Council could take a while.
All right.
The position, therefore, that I come back to is civil society being able to activate itself in this period and look at the kinds of checks and balances that we can mount to allow for the discomfort that the majority of the population that has answered your question and say they are not prepared to tolerate this for more than 3 months will want to treat with. And that is what we need to focus on.
All right, so we are quickly approaching 9 o'clock and we should be finishing at about 9:30. We have about 6 minutes to the hour of 9 o'clock. And just wanted to give you an idea as to the time frame that we have. Now, just want to remind persons who are viewing that this is a production of Tobago Civil Net, which is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society concerned with all the citizens of Tobago, and they want to combine all their forces towards the collective input of Tobago's development. Now, what I want to share with you, or before I move on to the next question, is a couple of the comments. Under the same survey, there was a part where people were allowed to just speak freely in terms of how they felt about it, unscripted comments. So I'll just read a couple. Now, it's a lot of comments, so I'll just read a couple, and you can give your thoughts on it, and I'll ask the other question as well, right? I'm reading verbatim because the comments were recorded verbatim. I love the PNM. I'll prefer that they be in power. However, Tracy needs to step down, Berkeley and the others too. The Tobagonians have been very patient with the process. We look forward to a solution soon. The leaders must behave maturely and share power. That's the mandate of the people. No other measure can offer a permanent solution. It is important to prevent the issue from tearing the society apart. I would love to see consultations between two parties on a way forward. I am disappointed that they have failed to do so at this time. The parties can at least decide on a presiding officer and move forward from there. One party cannot be making decisions at the moment. Decisions must be shared as they both have the same amount of seats. Tobago needs self-governance, and as there's a lot. I just wanted to mention a couple of them to you so you get an idea as to what the responses are. And in general, when I read through all the responses, I hear bits and pieces of all the responses coming from the panelists here, which seems to suggest that everyone is, well, most people are on the same plane. Now, I could take your comments on those comments as well, but the next question I want to ask is, how do you feel about the Prime Minister coming to Tobago to consult with the 12 assemblymen after the amendment has been laid in Parliament? Mr. Daniel, let's start with you. Sorry, just now, Mr. Daniel.
No, Shirley Cook's hand is up. Somebody's hand is up.
Sorry.
And yeah.
Shirley, okay.
Miss Caroline.
Carol.
Oh, it's Carol.
Shirley Cook's hand is up as well, and Caroline.
Okay, let me take Shirley Cook.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
I've been listening to the conversation, and I just wanted to add this. With respect to the polls, no one should take the fact that most people indicated they wanted to go back to the poll in isolation. We have to understand this, if Tobagonians could understand this from the perspective of 40 years we've had the THA. And during that entire time, for the 20 years for another party and the 20 years for the PNM, we have really operated on a kind of authoritarian, totalitarian style of government. So the people are not, people would say go back to the polls, but go back to the polls when and how? So my thing is that what civil society needs to do is to put down a written proposal to both parties for them to sit down and discuss the way forward. I believe that this situation requires, exactly as the poll said, no less than 3 and no greater than 6 months to resolve this. And during that period, there must be a coalition government. The problem that we have this stalemate is not because, it's because of choosing that presiding officer. And therefore, during this period, while we negotiate the ultimate price, which is the autonomy, it means that we need to find a coalition arrangement until such time that we get the autonomy, and then we go back to the polls. In that regard, we're suggesting a civil society is suggesting that we consider a mediation council, a Tobago council. That would be similar to the Tobago House that is proposed in the autonomy bill. Because these parties will not come together unless they're forced to, and I think civil society should be forcing them to do so by bringing a proposal, a written proposal for both of them to analyze, so that choosing the presiding officer by the assemblyman is a simple act that could be cut out. You do not give the assemblyman that power in a 6-6 because you will always have an impasse. Going back to the polls, remember the election was conducted pretty fairly, even though there were some allegations of unfairness. So you don't go back to play the game when the game was pretty much done fairly. The problem is the impasse, and it's because the assemblyman has to choose the presiding officer. So the power for choosing the presiding officer should be out of the assemblyman's hand. Put that into somebody else's hand, like a mediation council, so that they would choose who the presiding officer is, and you go on from there. According to the poll, everybody is articulating collaboration and coming together and running the assembly. And we can do that in the short time. So it forces both sides to speak to Trinidad forcefully on the autonomy bill. So this is where I think that the discussion needs to go, because we do not have enough time for this kind of holdover from a previous executive to continue without oversight. That is not democratic. And therefore, civil society must be able to articulate from mediation council an 11-member where both parties would choose 3 of one side, 3 of the other, and civil society choose the rest. That is the kind of format we need to go along with. Because the PNM got a majority of the vote, they could take the chief secretary position. All the other secretaries can be shared equally just until that time that we get the autonomy bill, because according to the member of parliament, she said that would be wrapped up sometime in May. I rest for now.
Thank you so much. That was a mouthful there from Ms. Cook, but we thank you so much for that contribution. Somebody was going to say something before she came in. Was it Caroline?
Okay. Yes, because you leave me out on asking what we can do. First thing, I think that the civil society can be a pressure group. We can put pressure on the 6-6 for them to come together, because we cannot stay like this. So that's one role that we can play. We can also get a chief negotiator and see if the two sides can come together with a chief negotiator. We have people who are trained to do that kind of thing at international level, and let's see if we can get both sides talking and come to a resolution. But I want to say because the Prime Minister has done his thing, but I want to say that do not dismiss the courts. Everybody is giving an opinion. We have not got a judicial pronouncement on this whole assembly and where they could draw lots and who has what power to do what. So do not dismiss that at all. Our way might be right there, right up to the Privy Council. And there are emergency ways that you can go to the Privy Council very fast. So don't dismiss that. Too many opinions. You need a judicial pronouncement as to who is right and who is wrong with this whole in the interpretation of this assembly act.
Okay, thank you. Now, because we only have half an hour, what I'll do, I'll ask probably like 2 questions for each round so that we could get both responses coming, right? Because I don't even want the discussion to end, but we know we have to end soon. So what I'll ask is, the question I asked was, how do you feel about the Prime Minister coming to Tobago to meet the 12 assemblymen after the bill has been laid in Parliament? And secondly, how do you feel Tobagonians feel about the PDP being in cahoots with the UNC? What are your thoughts on that? Caroline, as you were talking, you could go ahead and then we'll continue.
You will have to remind me about the second question. Oh, how do I feel about the cahoots with the PDP and the UNC?
Yeah, how do you feel Tobagonians feel about it? You could share how you feel as well, but how do you feel they feel, and then
Race baiting going on here.
Okay.
And you have to be careful with that race baiting, because the people who support the UNC are the people who are coming up to Tobago to be staying in our hotels, and they are the majority of our local tourists. So we have to be very, very careful with that race baiting. But that's what I see going on, because here's what. So what's wrong with that? There is a party in Trinidad who will have in the parliament. Is they have to stand up and say something on Tobago behalf. So I don't see anything wrong whether they spoke to the PDP speaking to the UNC, but I know it's a bit of race baiting, and we have to be very, very careful with that. How do I feel about the Prime Minister coming to Tobago after the fact? Well, I'm not sure what to feel, because I am saying he's a top diplomat, he's a top politician, and you should know that you have to talk to the other 6 before you, even if you have to mama guide them, before you go to Parliament and do your amendment. You have done your amendment, and now you are coming after the fact. What are you coming to say? It is very interesting, but the PDP is going, I have to go, and they said that they are going, so we'll see what comes of that. But I think it's bad diplomacy.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Caroline. Ms. Diane, over to you.
Let me say on part number 1, the Prime Minister coming after the fact is, as Tobagonians would always use the word, disrespectful. It did not give the Tobagonian and the democracy of the people the opportunity to say what they wanted. And after things are done, then you come and feed them whatever you have done. That was quite unfair. It was very unprofessional, if you want to say. And it really says very little of true leadership. And the other aspect of so it sends all the connotations of trying to corrupt the situation, or as you spoke of before, the question of grabbing power. It sends all of those signals and messages, which is wrong. And the other part about the PDP being cahoots with anybody, not just the UNC, but anybody, I think that we need to get past all of that crap that we portray in the country. And we need to start to recognize we are one people of one country, and the race is irrelevant, and the only race we should all be portraying is the human race. We use this whole thing very conveniently, and it needs to stop. And if COVID-19 did not send a message to the people of this country, they will pay a high price for it. They need to cut that crap out. I have to love Jamal and Andre and Didan and Caroline and Yudkern and Shirley and everybody else, just as God has put us here in one piece. And if they don't get that, 6-6 is a waste of time, because they can't resolve anything. And they don't deserve to lead the human race. That's my position on that.
Oh, for you.
So you can take that to the bank.
Mr. Phillips, let me get you coming in here.
As far as the PDP meeting with the UNC is concerned, the PDP needs to have outreach in the national parliament. And if it cannot dialogue with the government, it has to dialogue with the opposition, because it needs to find some strength in some of its positions. And indeed, that is very well on the table. Politically, the PNM is overplaying its hand in trying to make that look like it's something. But I think that the voting, the way how the votes went down, remember the PDP and UNC arrangement was already challenged and questioned during the campaign. And at the end of it, the PDP has been able to secure 6 seats.
Right.
Other part with regards to Dr. Rowley's visit, I would first say that the PDP is magnanimous. To be able to sit down after this, what I would call effrontery where the matter went to the parliament without the dialogue that both the PDP leader and the chief secretary designate had been seeking. I think they are magnanimous to attend. I do hope that there's a proper agenda on the table, but what I see is, again, brinksmanship. The prime minister wants to go in there with, you know, a show of strength. So really and truly, there is nothing that can be reversed in this scenario.
All right, Mr. Daniel, over to you, and then Mr. George.
Okay, now on the first question, what I think about the Prime Minister's overture in terms of meeting the two parties. Now, I have different feelings about it. Now, the Prime Minister, as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, has a responsibility in terms of the overall governance. But I think it is highly insulting at this point in time, given what has passed with the laying of the bill in Parliament, again, without the consultation. It's really insulting. An analogy really comes to mind. Let's say you have a basketball team, two basketball teams, and the coach for one of the team is the umpire in the game. How that will look, as we just say in local parlance? How you gonna look, right? It is really improper. I think what should have happened in this case is that the Prime Minister could have elected some senior person who has the air of neutrality, a senior statesman, to really come to bring these two teams together and engage in some meaningful negotiation. I think the Prime Minister's involvement in it sullies the process, given that he will clearly be batting for his side, and whether or not he could remove his partiness, for want of a better term, from the whole process, that left to be seen. But yes, it's insulting. I think another entity should have been in charge of that whole negotiating process. And sort of to go back to an earlier question that you asked, how should negotiation look like? To me, the negotiation has to be power sharing. There's no option, other option in my mind, that you should share up some of the secretaries among the both teams, as well as secretaries, so at least the teams who have spoken, and we do have the 6-6 outcome, that they be represented in terms of the decision making, policy making, and execution. And the thing about UNC lineage, to me, again, it's really, again, it's insulting. And I have to use the word insulting because certainly the PDP not speaking with the PNM. And I would think that any wise political party will seek to have alliances where alliances could be struck. And certainly they have no voice in the national parliament. So I would think that the UNC will be a natural ally that you should want to be able to do some kind of strategic negotiation with, to be able to achieve your political end. And to the way how they express it and they show it in all these racial overtones, I think the population is more mature than that. And it's an insult to the population with the type of insinuation that is being cast by that alliance. And it needs to stop. No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Mr. George?
Yeah, I think that one word that can be used to describe both of those situations is politricks, right? And that's something that we use in the local parlance, right? As it relates to the latter question, the collaboration between the PDP and the UNC. Right now, there is no real evidence that there has been any talks between the PDP and the UNC as it relates to the most recently concluded elections and the events that transpired afterwards. What we had were some attempts to make the population believe that that was taking place, some dishonest and deceiving attempts to make the population believe, which I think speaks volumes about character and about the values of the persons and by extension the party that would have been engaged in that kind of deception. So that's one. As it relates to Dr. Rowley and him meeting with all 12 members after the fact, with all due respect, I do think that it is insulting. And I really do think that it was a demonstration of a lack of good leadership, right? Leadership equals influence. And in order to influence people, you have to show up as a model leader, a model citizen whatever, all the things that you want your people to embody and to demonstrate and to live out each and every day, you have to be an embodiment of that. And this go rounds, Dr. Rowley fell short of modeling good leadership by the decision he made to meet with the 12 members after the fact. And just like, Ms. Carol said, even if it was the mama guy, the PDP people, right? At least you're as the most senior elected statesman, right, of Trinidad and Tobago, you have to now bridge the gap. You have to bring the country together. And more specifically, you have to see your role now as the person that's going to help mend the fence in Tobago. And so you have to act accordingly. Heading to Tobago after the fact doesn't do that.
All right, and as I'm with you, Mr. George, let me just move on one time. Now, we all agree that it may be disrespectful that he came after, but he has already laid something in the parliament. What I want to get from you all next is, what are your thoughts on the amendment that was laid in the parliament? That is one. And two, do you get this sense, because based on the comments that I got, a lot of people have been talking about self-governance, autonomy, and they use the words interchangeably. Do you get the sense that people genuinely understand what it means?
As it relates to the latter question, I'm not sure that people do, right? And I also don't think that we have done a good job educating our young people in particular, those that are still in school, on our system of governance and also on the history of that system of governance and the impact of that system of governance. So I don't think that the majority of people in Tobago actually want to take the time to read and to read the particular autonomy bill, and also to tune into the parliamentary debates and the assembly debates and wherever, what other conversation is taking place about it, so that they also stay informed themselves and do some independent learning around that. So I don't think, and forgive me, but I don't think that we're there as yet. As it relates to my opinion on the debate or the passing of the amendment, my understanding of it is that it's very specific to the number of seats, and that the data that they used to make the decision was the period of consultation on the autonomy bill that would have taken place some years ago. What I heard coming up a lot was that this is what the people of Tobago asked for. They specifically asked for 15 seats. I can't confirm or deny that because I was not there and I was not part of that process. But what I do think is a point that we need to put forward for consideration is, in the future, there might just be a third political party that emerges on the island. Mm-hmm. And in that regard, then what happens if there is a three-way tie? And as I was watching the debate and considering that question, another question came to my mind around like the perception that maybe Trinidad has of Tobago and Tobagonians, and the future of Tobago and Tobagonians is the perception that we're not going to evolve and to develop into a self-sustaining kind of island on which there might just be 3 to 5 political parties that come up and that go for elections each and every year. Look at the last election. We had independent candidates. We had a third political party. We had independent candidates and a third political party, in the same way that the PDP started with their 2 seats, right? So who's to say that the party that Nkosi is now a leader of is not going to grow over time and become a substantial party on the island? What then will happen with regards to the 15 seats?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Josh. Ms. Caroline, over to you. No, unmute your mic. Right.
Yes? Let me start. I wrote my little notes here. Do people understand self-government? I am going to say no. And I'm going to say something else that might be a little controversial. This idea of self-government has not reached to the length and breadth of Tobago. I followed a lot of the consultation, and few people came to the consultation. When they had a call to arms at the Mason Hall School, they had about 300 people. They came down to Penny Savers car park and said they will have another meeting. And I went out there. There were only about 50 people. Meaning to say, there's not great enthusiasm for this self-government bill. Nobody's talking about it on the street, except for a few people who have gone around and talk about self-government. So I hope they're taking my point here. Now, therefore, it comes back to the 15 seats. So where did the 15 seats come from? If you only had for the most 300 people coming to a meeting, and we have 51,000 people here, okay? It means then you need now to go to the length and breadth, to go into the homes, just like how we're campaigning, and ask the people what they think about the self-government, what they think we should do, and so on, vis-a-vis our relationship to Trinidad and so on. So to me, all that going down to Parliament and so on does not have the full endorsement of the people of Tobago. So 15 seats, you go on there and talk about 15 seats, and that's what the people of Tobago want. I'm going to say no. You did not go to the length and breadth. You did not do a campaign and go into people's homes and talk to them because people weren't coming out to you. So all of this here, we need, while we go down to Parliament to talk about that, we have not done our homework right. And I'm telling you, because I go everywhere, I talk to people about all these things, and nobody's even talking about that. They're just dismissing. That's my contribution.
Thank you. Mr. Daniel, over to you, sir. Unmute your mic, sir.
Yes, I tend to share some of the sentiments of Caroline. While I think, with regards to what people think about the self-government, while there was some consultation, the format may not have been so appropriate to be able to garner from the people their sentiments as to how it's supposed to be. It wasn't deep enough in my opinion. I think because there's so much there to be digested, it is sometimes it's above certain people's head. And again, we're talking about the format. What I would like to see is, or would like to see happening, is that aspects of the self-government bill be done something like a referendum, where it be broken down into bite-sized pieces, and then people vote on certain key things. Like, say, for example, if choosing the chief secretary, if there's an overwhelming thing, you say, okay, yes, that will be part of the whole governance arrangement, right? So make it nice and bite-sized, try to engage a lot of younger persons, use all the means of communication that are there, social media, the traditional media, creative media, different type of, go to the civil net has a key role to play in that, extremely role, because the thing that people will say to us in civil society, they wouldn't say it in a kind of politically charged atmosphere because of different anxieties and fears and so on. So we need to do that. Just an indication of what was from the poll that you mentioned is an indication that people are willing to listen. Because when you said 800 plus respondents, I was quite surprised because you don't normally see that in other organization when they put out these polls, right? And kudos to CivilNet for putting this out and be able to garner this level of quantitative information. So my feeling in terms of the numbers, 8, 10, 15, 20, to me it doesn't matter. One of the concerns I have for a small society is that we don't have too big a government. One of my key concerns is that the apparatus of the THA swallows up way too much of the human resource on the island, and it is not well optimized, right? Partially because we do have a vibrant private sector, because they trap them in what I call non-productive activities. I wouldn't call it work, non-productive activities, and the society is not getting the best output of it. So having such a 15 or whatever number, to me, will create a situation where we have too big a government for such a small society. We have roles for civil net organizations who do quite a lot with meager resources, way more efficient than the THA apparatus. And these are some of the innovative things we should be doing to enact the governance that we want and the execution of government policy so that it brings about the type of development that we need here in Tobago.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Allard. We quickly running out of time. Let's take Ms. Haddad, and then we'll go to Mr. Phillips.
The self-governance bill or wish list. I have to agree with Charmaine and Didan that and Jamal said it well. The people do not have a clear understanding. It's not been pushed in the education system. They know what they want, and they will probably know it in bite-sized pieces, the questions and answers. But to understand the whole governance structure and how the money is allocated and spent in terms of how Trinidad spends money on Tobago, and then they claim all this money is spent on Tobago, and what is given to Tobago literally for them to control or have access to. That whole thing is not quite clear. And because of that, Tobagonians, and if you're waiting on something for 40 years now, I guess you have given up. So the amount of interest that you are paying into when they come and speak about this topic anymore, internal self-governance and autonomy, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting. It's as though a promise is a comfort or a fool. So you have given up on whether I should even learn about it anymore and dig into it. But there are a number of people on the island who are serious about it, have always been, and continue to pursue this thing. And I think that one of the issues is we've lost a lot of good capital, human capital resources. People are frustrated when they come back here and have nothing good to go to. And they are dejected because they're also rejected because of what they've gone and developed themselves to. And a lot of those resources could have been used to help carry the whole island forward in terms of our whole ability to move. So needing that ability, we need it. Internal self-governance, we need to work, as Caroline said, and go and really sit and get people to be engaged. However, it needs to be brought down to our elementary level for us to understand what it is, because there are many things that are hidden in law and in how things are written, and therefore there's the mistrust as to what it is you're really bringing for us. So are you going to give it to me with my left hand and take it back with your right? And those are the things I think need to be clear to Tobagonians before Tobago moves forward. And organizations like this need to have an input to engage people so that they have their voices heard, and the meat of what needs to be said needs to come clean. Because I think the trust factor, Kern, is lost.
I get you. I totally get you. Over to Mr. Phillips. And what I want to ask you all also is, how do you see this current 6-6? What impacts do you see it having for the industry or the sector that you are involved in? And how do you see self-governance doing a positive for your sector as well? That'll be the next set of questions I'll be coming to. So Mr. Phillips, over to you.
All right. Well, basically, I want to just take up what Shirley Cook had mentioned.
No, sorry, Mr. Phillips. I don't mean to rush you. We are 9:27.
No, I'm bringing because I realize you come into a close, and I don't think I have
yeah. All right, cool, excellent.
So tying it into my closing comment. Shirley Cook pointed out that the mediation can be pursued, and indeed that is something that civil society has a role in. Alongside with that, I want to signal to all of us here that the Tobago House of Assembly Act requires that the budget for next year and every budget to be submitted by June 30th to Trinidad. We don't have an assembly now. So we are unlikely by June 30th to have any, what you would call administrative or legislative program to ensure a bill is brought forward and sent into Trinidad so that it could ultimately reach the Ministry of Finance to look at the draft estimates and so on. That is a major challenge for us if we do not have a functioning assembly by that time. We are really operating two branches of government, but only one is functioning. This is like a two-engine plane. One is working and the other one is not functioning. This is like fishing boats or 32-foot pirogue that carry two engines. One is working, the other one can't start. We are going to feel serious problems here and face serious problems if we are not able to activate the Legislative Council within the period that is set for that. And there may very well be another amendment. My final comment about the self-government is, I think we are suffering self-government fatigue. The various committees we've had from 2011 till 2017, they have worn us out. And people have not seen any returns in this regard to say it is worthwhile. And the challenge with what has just been passed in the House is that that is piecemeal legislation. They pull out something, they put it forward, and the rest of what has to happen with the full autonomy bill may not see the light of day anytime soon.
Okay.
That's our challenge.
All right, and Mr. Phillips, you just want to let us know briefly how you see the 6-6 impacting whatever sector or organization you're a part of?
We are really and truly doing socio and cultural. We promote social and cultural development. And in this regard, we believe we can continue to do what we are doing because we work along with other partners in Trinidad, in civil society in particular.
Okay, thank you. Mr. George?
I'd say that the impasse right now puts a barrier in place for actually setting up the kind of task force required for the education sector, right? Right now, among the assemblymen and women, I could identify 3 teachers, right? One of them taught me too, right? So I think that with the deadlock taking place, right, we're missing an opportunity to have those professionals come together to really figure out a way forward for the students, the teachers, and the education sector in general. I also think that in the same breath, it does present an opportunity for more learning, right? In that now students are being exposed to this challenge that we have going on currently, and they're now being fed information about history, about the current, and about a possible way forward. So maybe teachers can capitalize or take advantage of this not so great situation to start really molding our students and the future generation, their minds, to pay more attention to a governance system and structures.
Thank you, Mr. George. Ms. Caroline? Excellent.
Yes, so the 6-6 on our tourism, where, as you know, we are right now, our tourism, we are single-digit figures, that is our occupancy level, single-figure digits. So therefore, with this impasse here, we are talking about our airlift committee, how we are going to get back airlift. Everybody's already starting to negotiate. So we need some movement on our airlift. We also need movement on marketing. We need movement on local marketing, international marketing, as well as some kind of strategy as to how our hotels will survive. This is a pandemic going on, and as I said, it's single-digit occupancy for those who are lucky. People have already got some of them with utilities off and so on. That's lights, water, internet, telephone, and so on. It is as bad as you can get. Because remember, we were closed for most of last year. So this 6-6 year needs innovation to come to our new thinking and innovation to come to our tourism sector. And we are looking forward to that. And therefore, the impasse, there must be some kind of a change to happen between now and the same word. Maybe another month or 2, because we need to get this sector going again, and we need to do some planning while we're waiting for the borders to open. Plans need to be going on now. We need to be negotiating for airlift and so on right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Daniel, over to you.
Yeah, so this situation has sort of get our agriculture sector in a state of inertia. We are already suffering under the effects of the COVID in the sense of market dislocation. Caroline just spoke about single-digit occupancy. Our sector is aligned to theirs. Once they have low occupancy, it means that our farmers are less able to sell tomato and lettuce and pak choy and whatever to the hotels. And so that affects us. And there's need for stakeholder coordination. Around this time, this is the time that we are helping to feed into the whole budget process that Mr. Phillips just mentioned, so that part of our policy prescription could find its way into the assembly policy as it relates to agriculture in terms of getting the funding to move the sector forward, right? So once we have this stalemate, these things remain in status. And so we really want to see a resolution so that we could exhale finally, see a vista of opportunity that we could pursue to help to revive the sector. And because of the alignment we have with different sectors, whether the education sector, because of the education system falling down, we have less output to the sector, like through the school feeding program and all those things. So there's a need for some forward movement among all the different sectors, which impacts us so that we can move forward. Because right now, agriculture is in a very sorry state. We have a whole lot of potential, that is without doubt, but we need to have that clarity, that forward movement, that vista of opportunity so we could pursue it. So
thank you, Mr.
Fix it quick.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. Mr. Daniel, over to you. So
just for me to say, Kern, that the entire instability of Tobago's future or the stagnation that we are at doesn't lend well for anybody wanting to give you the opportunity for credit, for finance, for restructuring. They do not know, you do not know how to write a restructured business plan. You do not know what to go with to any financial institution. And therefore, everybody that you do work with will sit waiting, and they will keep pulling the reins around your neck more and more because they do not know what this outcome will be. There is no timeline to its ending, and therefore you can never run anything successful, anything, not just business. We are all interconnected, and you can never run anything successful without good leadership. You cannot run without proper decision making. You cannot run it good without set timelines and methodology and delivery. And we have been there for a while. So this is probably a crossroads for us to start to get on the right path. But for the 6-6, it's not doing us any good now. Stuck where we are.
Okay. All right. And as we close, I don't know if there are any other members who are a part of the Zoom. If they have any questions, now is your time to ask your questions quickly before we end this Zoom session. So if you have a question, now you can ask it. And as we wrap, what I want to get from each one of you is I want you to tell me, as it relates to the situation that we are in and going forward, tell me something positive, or rather speak to the leaders of both political parties, the PNM and the PDP in Tobago. I want you to speak to them for me. Something positive about what they have been doing, comment on something that you think they are doing negatively, and give one word of advice to each one of the parties, right? Mr. Phillips, we'll start with you.
Well, the situation is not irretrievable. I believe cooler heads on both sides can help to rescue a situation that can lead to a geographical divide in Tobago, where the East is not relating well to the West. Right. We have to be very careful that the way both parties display themselves and the behavior they demonstrate will indeed lead us down that way. Which is interesting because Tracy Davison comes from Roxborough. So she's from the East, but she's not being seen as a person who is in the firmament of the East, given the polarization of the two parties. We need to break the polarization and let those people start to talk. I'm sure they could go to church together. I'm sure they have family members who can help them to intertwine. And I feel if civil society doesn't get into the picture, it is really your family circles, your church circles that can lead some breaking of the ice within the leadership of both sides. That is my recommendation.
All right. Okay, thank you. Mr. George, over to you, sir.
You know, I'll be honest, I'll be transparent, right? I'm a little stumped here because I have a lot of thoughts going through my head right now. So I may not answer your question, but what I would say is that it's time to do things differently. It is time to do things differently and to reflect soberly on the results of the elections, not just what the numbers say, but you know, I love qualitative data, as I'm sure everybody can tell, but also what it means, not just what the numbers say, but also what it means and what the people are trying to tell you as their leaders, right? I do think it's time that we do things differently and we take advantage of the opportunity to do so. What I would say in closing is that I feel very privileged to be on this panel, right? On this panel, we have experts, leaders, and beacons in their respective fields. And it says something that across the board, there's a high level of alignment, right? And agreement and consensus as it relates to the discussion and the conversation that we've been having tonight. And so to me, it behooves a good leader to really put their ears to the ground and to really get into conversation with people on this panel and people like people on this panel to really figure out how we can bring all of these opinions, all of these ideas, these feelings, these thoughts, these expertise, these skills, these competencies together to really figure out what is best for Tobago, Tobago's development, and the people of Tobago.
Thank you, Mr. George. Ms. Caroline, over to you.
Well, first thing I would say, the two parties, they need to find a negotiator. And we have to look behind the numbers. What is behind the numbers? From 12 to 10 to 6, from 2 to 6. So therefore, there's a momentum going on behind the numbers. And both leaders need to look at that. The momentum that's going on behind the numbers. What is it saying behind those numbers? Both leaders need to look, because I'll tell you something. People are saying, if we have to go back to the elections, we are going to show them what we mean. People are saying that already, if we have to go back. So I'm hoping that these two leaders, young guys, those are going up for the chief secretary, they are young guys, they are bright guys, and therefore they need to look behind the numbers, see exactly what is going on with their party, each one of them. And bear in mind, post-elections, we are looking at the behavior of both parties. Okay, so I hope we don't feel that they have got away or anything like that. But so we need to end the story here now. We need to have maybe a chief negotiator come together, get a presiding officer. Let's get the thing going, and we'll move on from there. But we cannot leave Tobago like this, more or less governless, and people are doing their own thing, and we have nobody to give any kind of oversight. That is very, very, very important.
Thank you, Ms. Caroline. Mr. Daniel, over to you, sir.
Now, I frame this in the wider context of the autonomy of self-government, which is 40 years now. I was 8 years old when this thing started. I don't want to be 60 and still having these conversations, because I'm thinking that the succeeding generations wouldn't be so forgiving for the leaders of present missing this opportunity. So I'm speaking to Ansel Dennis. I'm speaking to Farley Augustine. This is your moment in time. The people have spoken. And I know to some extent you all are listening. On the part of Ansel Dennis, his decision to rescind the appointment of Mr. Spencer tells me that he is listening to people on the ground. Continue so to do. Farley, also listen. The both of you come together. I think the both of you will be a dynamic duo. Seriously, I'm seeing that vision. And come together and craft a formula that we can share power and do so with the interest of the people, so that the subsequent generations will not judge you unkindly for having this moment and squandering it. Don't do it. Do what you know your heart of heart tell you that you need to do. Now is your time.
Agreed.
Thank you, Uncle Daniel. Ms. Diane, over to you.
Didan almost took all the words out my mouth because I said I'm going to call names. So I only want to say something that I didn't quite understand Ansel to be the leader. My interpretation is that Miss Tracy Davidson Celestin is the leader as we speak, right? And I want to say to Miss Tracy Davidson Celestin that at times maybe we have to strip ourselves for the greater glory and for the good of all. And if that's what it takes at this time, then be a big woman and be a good woman and do what's necessary to bring family life to this home. That's number one. Number two is I want to say to Farley that he has done a marvelous job so far in trying to bring this to a resolution for the best interest of the people, and his message is clear. I want to say to Mr. Duke that he has clearly, hopefully decided that if it means that he had to take a back seat to allow better to control, then that decision must be there. And to Ansel, who has clearly come and done what is necessary, that they must now put the people before their parties. And that must be their decision-making process as born, bred, beautiful Tobagoans. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, this was amazing. You know, I always like to moderate events for Tobago CivilNet because it's an opportunity for persons to learn and to hear what the people are saying. And this time I am thankful for it again. And for all those who are viewing, we want to thank you for viewing. I want to especially thank our panelists, Miss Diane Haddad, Mr. Didan Daniel, Ms. Carol Ann Birchwood James, Mr. Jamal George, and Mr. Andre Phillips, and also Ms. Shirley Cook for her contributions. We want to thank you so much. Your contributions have been invaluable. And I hope that the heads that be the persons that make the decisions, that they can listen to these recommendations and they can include them in their policies going forward and in their decisions going forward. The Tobago CivilNet has also posted on its Facebook page the results of the poll, and they also have some commentary with it as well. So you are free to go on the Facebook page and have a look at the results, and you can get an idea as to what the Tobago population is saying. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, we want to thank you. For those who are viewing on social media platform, we want to thank you for locking in. We want to thank you for your contributions, and we want to thank Tobago CivilNet for human service that you are doing. Please continue to do what you are doing because it is needed at this point in our lives. So this has brought us to the end of this discussion, and we ask that you pay attention to the Facebook page. If you have any contributions, just send a message, and there is someone who is always there to retrieve that message and get back onto you. So thank you once again. Do have a blessed and a safe night, and we will see you whenever the next Tobago Civil Network talk is on. All right. Thank you all and take care. Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right, Uncle Didan.
Bye. You're welcome.